There's a certain sadness that clings to Hollywood's golden age, a shimmer that blinds then breaks. Behind the lights, the glamour, the fame, there's always a shadow. And Blonde, 2022, directed by Dominik, dives headfirst into that shadow. It isn't just a movie about Marilyn Monroe. It's a descent into the myth of her and what happens when the world decides to love an illusion more than a human being. From the very first frame, Blonde doesn't pretend to be a biopic. It's more like a fever dream, distorted, cinematic, painful. It follows Norma Jean, the woman behind Marilyn, through fragments of her life, her childhood trauma, her rise to fame, her relationships, her breakdowns. But everything feels slightly unreal, as if we're trapped inside a memory that won't stop replaying itself. Ana de Armas gives a haunting performance. She doesn't imitate Marilyn, she channels her. Every tremble in her voice, every flicker in her eyes, feels like someone trying to stay afloat in an ocean of expectation. Dominik's camera refuses to look away. It captures her beauty, her vulnerability, her collapse. Sometimes in black and white, sometimes in color, as if reality itself can't decide what to believe. 6-year-old Norma Jean Mortensen is raised by her mentally unstable mother, Gladys Pearl Baker. On her 7th birthday in 1933, Norma Jean is given a framed picture of a man which Gladys claims was her father. Later that night, a fire breaks out in Hollywood Hills. Gladys attempts to drive Norma Jean up there, saying that her friend who owns a fireproof mansion lives there. However, she is forced to go back at the orders of the police. Norma asks her mother why her father left them, which enraged Gladys, who starts to cry, shout, and hit Norma. Back home, Gladys runs a bath and forces Norma to get in, despite her protests that it's too hot. While giving Norma Jean a bath, an enraged Gladys tries to drown her. Norma Jean flees to the house of her neighbor, Miss Flynn, who promises she will be fine. Days later, Norma Jean is sent to an orphanage while Gladys is admitted to a mental hospital, having been declared unfit to raise a child. In the 1940s, Norma Jean has become a pinup model under the stage name Marilyn Monroe, featuring on magazine covers and calendars. While trying to get a break into the acting world, she is raped by film studio president Mr. Z. In 1951, she auditions for the role of Nell in Don't Bother to Knock. The audition goes awry when she breaks down and leaves in tears, but impresses the casting director enough to give her the part. As her career steadily rises, she meets Charles Cass Chaplin Jr. and Edward G. Eddie Robinson Jr. and becomes a lover to both. Norma Jean lands her breakout role in 1953 with Niagara, but after she is spotted in public with Cass and Eddie, her agent requests that she limit her appearances with them in public, which upsets her as she feels that her Marilyn persona is just a role and not her real self. Norma Jean becomes pregnant by Cass, much to her delight, but decides to get an abortion out of fear of the child possibly inheriting her mother's mental issues. Cass supports her decision. On the day of the appointment, she changes her mind, but her pleas to cancel the appointment are ignored. After she breaks things off with Cass and Eddie, she later meets Joe DiMaggio, a retired athlete who sympathizes with her when she expresses her desire to leave Hollywood and become a more serious actress in New York City. As Norma Jean begins Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, she receives a letter from a man claiming to be her father. She feels disconnected from her on-screen performance at the film's premiere, saying it is not her. She returns to her hotel room, having been told that someone is waiting for her. Expecting it to be her father, she instead finds DiMaggio, who proposes to her, which she accepts reluctantly. Norma Jean and Joe's marriage sours when Cass and Eddie give Joe some nude publicity photographs of her, which enrages him so much that he hits Norma Jean and demands that she stops making the 7-year itch. She goes through with filming nonetheless. doing the famous stunt with the white dress. When she arrives home, a drunken Joe screams at her and gets more physically violent. She divorces him shortly after. In 1955, Norma Jean auditions for the Broadway play Magda by renowned playwright Arthur Miller. During a read-through, her performance impresses everyone except Miller, but he eventually warms up to her when she gives him some insightful character analysis. Norma Jean and Arthur marry and move to Maine, where she lives a happy life with him and becomes pregnant again. However, when walking on the beach one day with a platter of food, she falls and miscarries. Distraught, she returns to acting. While filming Some Like It Hot, Norma Jean becomes more uncontrollable and mentally disturbed, overwhelmed by the constant press attention, feels that she is becoming a joke, has frequent outbursts on set, especially towards director Billy Wilder, and grows increasingly distant from Arthur. To cope with her stress, she begins taking pills. By 1962, she's become dependent on drugs and alcohol. Secret Service agents pick up an intoxicated Norma Jean and take her to a hotel to meet President John F. Kennedy, who rapes her and then has her taken away after she vomits in his bed. Already dazed and drugged, Norma Jean begins to wonder if this is what being Marilyn Monroe has led to, and she also hallucinates having another abortion before being sent back to her home in Los Angeles. She learns from Eddie on the phone that Cass has died and left something for her, which she refuses to see initially, but is convinced by Eddie, who sends it in a package in the mail. It turns out to be the stuffed tiger she had found when the three of them were together, and the package also contains a letter from Cass, where he confesses that the letters Norma Jean has been receiving, supposedly from her father, were actually written by him. Shattered by the revelation, Norma Jean overdoses on barbiturates. As she lies dying on her bed, she has a vision of her father welcoming her to the afterlife. But Blonde didn't arrive quietly. It landed like a shockwave. Before its release, it was already surrounded by controversy, rumors of graphic content, emotional intensity, and scenes that would test audiences' limits. When it finally dropped on Netflix, people didn't know how to react. Some called it brave and beautiful. Others called it cruel and exploitative. For some, it was an art film about pain, a meditation on what it means to lose yourself inside the world's gaze. For others, it was a violation, a film that took Marilyn's suffering and turned it into spectacle. The NC-17 rating was just the start. Critics argued over whether Dominik's version of Marilyn honored her or stripped her of her humanity once again. The film recreated moments of her life with brutal honesty, scenes that made people uncomfortable, angry, divided. But maybe that's what Dominik intended all along, to hold up a mirror to how we consume Marilyn, then and now. In one interview, he said he wanted to show what it was like to be devoured by an image. And that's what Blonde feels like. A story about a woman everyone thought they knew, told through a lens that refuses to comfort you. It's the ache of fame, the weight of expectation, the loneliness of being desired but never understood. Ana de Armas went through months of preparation, voice work, emotional immersion, recreating iconic moments with precision and pain. And you can feel it. Her performance is exhausting, raw, and eerily real. It's not glamorous, it's haunting. But Blonde pushes further than most films dare. It blurs the line between empathy and endurance. It shows Marilyn not as a symbol, but as a wound, open, aching, endless. And that made people uncomfortable. Some said it crossed the line. Others said it finally told the truth that Hollywood had been hiding for decades. The backlash was intense. Many viewers accused the film of fetishizing trauma, of turning pain into art for shock value. But others argued that the discomfort was the point, that it forces you to confront the cost of fame, the machinery that chews people up and sells their sadness back to us in glossy frames. Throughout its 2 hours and 40 minutes, Blonde feels like a hallucination. One moment, Norma Jean is a child lost in fear. The next, Marilyn is standing under blinding studio lights, smiling for cameras that will never love her back. Every scene feels like a tug of war between who she was and who the world wanted her to be. The film doesn't offer easy answers. It doesn't comfort or inspire. It just hurts. And maybe that's why it lingers. It's not a story about success. It's about what success takes from you. Critics and audiences are still split. Was it exploitation or was it exposure? Was it empathy or performance? Maybe it's all of those at once. Blonde is cinema's confrontation, not meant to please but to provoke, to make us ask why we're drawn to stories of tragedy in the first place. And beyond the noise, beyond the debates, something remains. A portrait of a woman who became too big for her own life, who smiled for millions while falling apart inside, who was remembered for her body before her mind, her legend before her truth. Marilyn Monroe became a myth. Blonde is about what that myth cost. It's not about the dresses, the diamonds, the laughter. It's about the echo that comes after all of it fades, the silence that no one hears. Ana de Armas carries that silence like a ghost. Her Marilyn isn't perfect or polished or even consistent. She's fractured, lost, and searching. She's every version of herself the world demanded, and none of them were enough. In the end, Blonde isn't about Marilyn dying. It's about the world watching her die again and again, on screen, in headlines, in our imaginations. It's about how Hollywood sells tragedy as beauty and how we keep buying it. And when the credits roll, you're left not with admiration, but with ache. Because maybe deep down, we know the truth. Marilyn Monroe was never allowed to be real. She was a dream built for everyone but herself. And Blonde is what happens when the dream finally wakes up.